Welcome to the Meat and Potatoes Podcast. We're here with Brandon Henderson, who is the CEO and booker for the Boxcar Comedy Club. I am so excited for this one. How are you, Brandon?
Doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
You aren't going to do a bit. You're not going to do a comedic performance, even though that would be fun. But we're going to talk about like the business side of it and this awesome new project that you and your team are doing called Boxcar Comedy Club.
Yep.
Give us the basic details and then give us like the founding story, the vision. Where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so the expectations need to go way, way down. I'm the guy that hires the comedians, so this is going to be wildly boring. That's my goal. So Boxcar Comedy Club is at Legends Motor Co. in Springville, Utah, which is part of, Strap Tank, Legends Motorcycle Museum, and that whole compound down there. If anybody's been down there, there's like the shipping container compound, and there's tattoo parlor and Mexican restaurants and record shop and a barber shop and coffee shop, and there's a bunch of stuff down there. And the origin story for that, the genesis rather, was really I just have been doing comedy for a while in terms of production, and I've always loved the Strap Tank restaurants. Rick and Vicky Salisbury started that. They have one in Lehigh, of course, one down in Springville, and they're building one in St. George as we speak. And just thinking about Utah County, it's like, I love the Olive Garden, but let's step it up and find a few more things to do. And anytime I would go into a Strap Tank, it immediately felt like this could be, from a vibe perspective, this could work for comedy. It just sort of had the soul of it, I suspect. And so just approached, the Salisburys and started to have a conversation around what if we put in a comedy club. And because of the shipping container compound that's down there, there's space there. And they were just as insane as me and decided to take the plunge and make this thing happen. And because, Rick is such an amazing builder and designer, it is, in my opinion, the best club in terms of, visuals. And I believe once everybody starts getting in there, we open in August 19th, but that it will be the best experience in the country. It'll be hard to beat in terms of just the way the room is built and the way it looks and feels and all that sort of stuff. There's nothing like it. So There's my long-winded answer.
I love it. Because the aesthetics are important, right? Like you kind of set the tone with the visuals and the cool paintings, the cool artifacts, whatever it is, right? Like I've only been in the Strap Tank in Lehigh.
Yeah.
But I'm looking around for the entire meal because I'm entertained by the stuff.
Well, and it's not an Applebee's, right? It's all real.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just taking out all of the established restaurants, but all that stuff is real. I mean, those are real collectibles, and a lot of them are one of a kind. And I mean, the motorcycle museum down there, for example, has my understanding, and I want to get this right, and I probably will get it wrong, and I apologize to Rick personally if I get this wrong, because the details are important, but I think it's one of, if not the first Harley Davidson. It's definitely it's an all original Strap Tank motorcycle, hence the name, and just incredible stuff down there. So if you're in those restaurants or you're in that space and you look around and you're like, oh, that's interesting, or that looks cool, maybe ask a question, because it's probably something, potentially priceless and really rad to know about its history.
Yeah. So if I'm understanding this correctly, you could like get educated with like a cool museum. You could get a tattoo.
You sure can.
Eat some Mexican food, and then like watch a really funny comedian.
Yeah.
At the bookend.
Yeah, and that's the idea. Is so Legends Motor Co. is that compound and that whole experience, and then there's all these things underneath, and it's what we've been pitching is this idea of Thanksgiving Point for adults, right? So come in, you can spend an entire day there easily. You can spend a few days there if you really want to. Like you say, come down, see the motorcycle museum, get your face tattooed, get some really great Mexican food, go to a comedy show. And, the comedy club is a world-class club, right? So we've got comedians from everywhere coming through to touring comics, people you've seen on TV, people you may not have heard of, but will be hilarious and are working every room in the country.
Yeah.
And so it's something that you can experience that's unlike anything else in the state, let alone beyond that.
Yeah, it's right at the southern end of Utah County
Yeah,
from Salt Lake.
not far. And again, if you come and you spend a little bit of time there, it's well worth, the little bit of extra drive if you're popping out there.
Oh, for sure. And how big is the actual comedy club? How many seats are there?
So Boxcar Comedy Club has 215 seats, and it is a 21 plus club. So it has a bar, so you can come in and you can have a beer or a root beer. It's up to you. We won't make you do one or the other. But yeah, 215.
Very cool. And as with all startups, right? Like you need to get the word out.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure that the check's clear. You need to do a lot of things, right? And that's kind of your job, on the comedy side. And it's its own industry. A lot of people are familiar with it anecdotally, from watching TV or going to shows. But you live and breathe it. How has it been as kind of a startup, getting the comedians lined up, telling them about the vision, telling them it's like, yeah, it's just south of Provo.
Yeah.
Actually, right? How's that been for you?
I mean, honestly, it's been really good. I think just like with anything, there's no difference in comedy or entertainment than there is in really any other industry. There are people that are easy to work with. There are people that are hard to work with. But at the end of the day, people are just looking for honesty and a good deal and to get paid on time and to know that they can have confidence in what you're doing. And so, some of the past work that I've done has helped with that. There's a big barrier to entry, which, fortunately, to some extent happened for me some years ago. So, had to climb over a bunch of hurdles and prove that, hey, that check will clear, which is probably the biggest thing. But once that happens once or twice or 5 or 10 times, then, you become somewhat of a known entity and you can be trusted to get the job done and get it done right. And for us, like bringing comics to our club and knowing that it's, an unknown, first of all, so it's a brand new club. Doesn't matter how much people may or may not know me. It's an unknown. Knowing the unknown, we want to give everybody the absolute best experience possible. So we want to pay them well. We want to pay them quickly. We want to give them the best accommodations as humanly possible. So when comics come, they might have to drive an extra 20 minutes or 30 minutes to get to the club, but they're going to stay in the best spot. They're going to, be recommended the best food. We're going to show them, the best sites, if they want to go and do something during the day. And the club is going to be the best experience that they've, hopefully ever had in a room. And so we just, have to work on that balance so that knowing that there's this, we're going to increase this so that it's all, the best thing that we can do.
Yeah. I think in, 2 or 3 years, the word will be out and it'll be a little bit easier to help tell that story.
Yeah, I hope so. And hopefully a lot faster than that. I think there's a lot of momentum. People are really excited. That's the thing about like with Utah County. I don't think that people in Utah County get the credit for senses of humor that they have. I think people in Utah County are really funny. I think that they appreciate good humor. I think that they're really hungry for, sort of if I can put it this way, a higher level of entertainment.
Yeah. And
I think that they're thrilled at the prospect. The vast majority of everyone I've talked to, and the responses that we're getting are very positive. And my thing too is like, there's the prevailing sort of sentiment or idea that like, more adult content will be pushed at. But for me, it's like, well, they're playing John Wick at the movie theater, aren't they?
Yeah.
Buy a ticket to that if you want to, or buy a ticket to the Pixar movie. And both are great.
Yeah.
And will be the same thing. Our comedians, some of them will be very adult and some of them will be, really clean. Our only goal is to be funny.
Yeah.
That's all we care about. If you're funny, and you're not, spewing hate speech or something,
Right.
we want to have you at the club, and that's what we'll provide. So as long as you, as an audience member, have the responsibility to know what you might be getting into,
Yeah.
come and have a great time. That's all we're trying to do.
Yeah. I love it. And obviously, yeah, it'd be a poor business decision to just have the rough ones all the time, right?
Yeah.
Like, especially in Utah County, it's good to have the clean ones.
Yeah.
What is the one in New York by NYU, the Comedy Cellar?
Comedy Cellar.
I've been there twice, and it's not for the faint of heart, right? And I think that's probably most of their nights, right?
Yeah.
That'd be my guess.
Yeah. I mean, and it's also like, those rooms, like a room like the Comedy Cellar, that's a place where people, that, in my opinion, the very heart of comedy for sure. And, you've got to provide the space for people to push and to play with, those ideas and just to figure out what is funny. And again, when I say this, like, I am, there are political comics out there, and there are, like, important comics, and there's a place for all that, and I enjoy that too. But what I enjoy more than anything is just funny comedians.
Yeah.
Whatever the content is, whether it's super adult or it's hyper clean. Just, again, I'm being redundant, but funny. And those rooms provide the opportunity for people to push and find those edges, so that they can maybe pull back a little bit and then make the thing for the masses.
Yeah. How did you get into this very fun and cool industry?
Severe mental illness. But I think I just have always been in love with the circus, so to speak. I love a live performance. Since I was a little kid, I tried to write a play in the 5th grade. I grew up in a small farm town in the middle of nowhere in Canada, and no one was telling me to do that. I just loved films, and I loved plays, and I loved all that stuff. And unfortunately, I suck at it, but I love the production. And so I think it's just always kind of been in my blood. But it took me a while to come back around to it. I mean, I went and got a Master of Fine Arts in writing, and then immediately started working for a software company because I had children, and writing, while very lucrative, wasn't happening. And so I started doing that, and then you get deep into a career, and you start sort of waking back up to the thing that you really were passionate about. And I was in that situation anyway. Some people are a lot smarter and just stick with it and start from the beginning, but I didn't do it that way. And so I had to sort of work full time at this other thing that I really didn't like, and try to start tiptoeing into this other thing. And it wasn't easy. It took some pretty serious conversations. It took some pretty serious sacrifices. And I don't even mean, sacrifices that probably a lot of people wouldn't make. And I don't mean that in the sense of like, they were even good sacrifices, but it takes sacrifices. And so, over time, it got to the point where, found funding and found the ability to like pay for this kind of a career and get paid for this kind of a career. And really, not until somewhat recently, the last few years, to where I could completely flip it and just do this full time. But it's not an easy thing, but had, enough great friends and mentors and coworkers and partners that were willing to take a swing with me and for me, that I could make this happen. And again, it's just like any industry. It's introductions. It's who you know. It's proving that you can do the job well. And just eventually got to the point where I can do the thing I really love to do.
Good for you. It's always better when life works out like that.
Yes.
So, as the CO and booker, like there's what you actually do. Is it more of an art or a science, right? Because you might think they're funny.
Yeah.
And the crowd might not. How do
That's
you
right.
kind of balance that?
Man, that's a tough one, because, I am fairly opinionated when it comes to comedy and what I do think is funny. However, there is that sort of like, I may not personally be buying tickets to Taylor Swift, but I understand why people like Taylor Swift. And I don't, I'm not going to be like, well, you're an idiot for liking that.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of like a similar space. It's like, my kids like particular kind of music or television show or YouTube videos or whatever it is. And I, especially YouTube, I mean, it makes me want to die, those YouTube videos. So my son, especially 12, watches these things, and I constantly tell him how stupid they are. So
Yeah.
maybe I do have an opinion, but I can't deny the fact that it's, these videos he's watching have like 500 million views, right? So there is a market for it. So it is an interesting balance as a business owner in the space, and not just like an appreciator of comedy or whatever, to try to step back a little bit and think about an audience, think about, not to make it this gross, because it really does get gross this way, but like think about it in terms of like consumers and product, a little bit.
Mhm.
You kind of have to step into it. I don't like stepping into it, but you do a little bit and consider your market.
Yeah.
Again, we're in Utah County. What will people in Utah County like? What's a market, in Utah County that's untapped, which is part of what we're going after. What kind of comedians are going to appeal? There's some comedians that, again, going back to the political stuff, may speak in a political tone that I don't personally agree with. For example, I'm probably still going to book them if they appeal to the market.
Yeah.
So it's tricky, but it's just like with anything, just sitting and sort of listening, hopefully understanding what it is that you're providing, and hopefully make the right choices.
Yeah. So over like a calendar year, like again, you mentioned the grand opening is August 19th. So from August 19th, 2023 to 2024, are the comedians going to be on the weekends, like every day? Like how crazy are you going to go with this?
So every weekend, Friday and Saturday, we'll have 2 shows a night for the most part. We'll only be closed, maybe 3 or 4 weekends out of the year. So we'll be very busy. So stuff all the time. We'll have open mic every Monday. That actually starts, August 7th. And then we'll have a lot of local shows. We'll have, people that will come in through routing. They happen to be in Denver, and we can pop them over for a night on a Wednesday. And so we'll do that, but definitely every Friday and Saturday.
Very cool. And as you're building out like the big first couple of months, we'll call it.
Yeah.
What was your goal as far as like the diversity of comedians? What were some of your internal goals? What are some of your team goals for like attendance and laughs and cheers, all of that?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like diversity of comedians, like, again, it goes back to the thing we were just talking about of what will work with this market and what do people want, and trying not to like be, try not to duplicate every weekend and have it be the exact same thing over and over and over again. So there's a variety of voices that are coming through. So, opening night, we have James Austin Johnson from Saturday Night Live. He's an impressionist and super funny. And then we're going to have, Eddie Pepitone, who is a legendary comedian and will, rip your face off, and is just an incredible writer and comic, if I can say it. And then we're going to have Jamie Kennedy, so more of, sort of this known name, and been in a bunch of movies, but has done stand-up for a long, long time. And, Mary Lynn Rajkab, who is in 24 and television series and does stand-up. And we'll have all kinds of people coming through from a variety of backgrounds and a variety of tones. And I think it's just providing variety while hitting what people actually want is a balance. But we just want people to come in and laugh hard. Want to fill the room, obviously, every single night. We want that to be, for the audience, it's better if it's full, and for the comedian, obviously, it's better if it's full.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And is that when you get like most nervous, is the day or two before?
Nothing in the world is worse than promotion. If I could not ever have to worry about that thing, I would be a much more pleasant person. It is the most stressful thing. I produced a show on at Caroline's on Broadway a couple of years ago, and the room was not what we wanted it to be in terms of ticket sales. early in the day of the show, and I just ended up, I literally ran about 12 miles between Times Square and Midtown, just yelling at people and like getting them to come to the show because we were filming, and we needed the room to be full, and it was a short notice enterprise, the entire thing, and so I would rather eat at Applebee's than have to do that.
Oh, I love it. That's 2 shots at Applebee's, only 1 at Olive Garden.
Oh, well, we'll come back around.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. So you've zeroed in on like a comedian that you'd like to invite for November, let's say.
Yeah.
How does that work for you? Do you send them an email? Do you already have their phone number? Do you have to work through a manager, an agent? What's it like?
Yeah, the vast majority of those instances will be reaching out to their agent. Maybe it comes through their manager. So, you hear these words all the time, but, manager is basically somebody that is going to find somebody an opportunity, and an agent is somebody who is going to close the deal on that opportunity, work the contract. So managers are nice and agents are a pain.
Yeah.
Not always. I love you, agents. I'm sorry. But yeah, so it's, reaching out to agents typically, offering some sort of, price, giving some sort of monetary offer, dates, figuring out availability, and just working through a contract and getting somebody signed. So it's not a whole lot different than, sales, your typical sales, software sales situation.
Yeah.
Where you've got a list of people and you're going to call them. It's a much smaller list, obviously, and you will have, the same phone calls with the same people over and over. But again, build that rapport, show them that you are good to do business with, and it becomes easier and easier over time. But sometimes it is a personal, connection. I know comedian X, so I'm gonna call them or shoot them a text. But even in that moment, it's typically like, okay, yeah, I'd love to come out, reach out to my agent, so-and-so. It's easier for a comedian to not have to deal with that, and you can keep that relationship a little bit less complicated when they come to the room, and you can just make it about comedy and make it about taking care of them. You don't have to talk about, no dollars and cents, and if there's any sort of like problem with the contract, then it sour that relationship with them. You can work with the thick-skinned lizard that is the agent and get that done.
Yeah, you can shoot the messenger.
Yep.
You've got a group of comedians that are pretty well known. They've got more money than Davy Crockett, like they've made it, right? And then you've got a couple levels below, and then we were talking a little bit before. I think you called them road dogs, right? Like the ones that just grind. So I assume you guys, like, as you're structuring your business model, the overall like business plan, and then individually for like these weekends, if you had 5 or 6 big names, those come with gigantic price tags, right?
Right.
So from a business perspective, how do you like live in those different sectors of comedians?
I mean, it's just investment, really. It's loss leaders. Some comics you're going to bring in and you will make no money at all. You might lose money because of the deals that they require to get them in that room. And we only have 215 seats. And so, there are, in this world, there's guarantees where you're just given a cash guarantee. You're guaranteed this much money. And some deals are just that simple. I'm going to give you X dollars. I'm going to pay for your travel, and I'm going to pay for your hotel. And that's the deal. Come and do 4 shows. Some are a little more complicated where there's a guarantee versus a door deal, meaning I'll give you X amount of dollars, or I'll give you 80% of the room, whichever's higher, plus all this other stuff. And some will be like, I want the whole room, plus I want a guarantee. And you just kind of have to work it out. And if you only have 215 seats, but their price tag is, $50,000, it's going to be really hard to recoup those dollars. Yeah. So you have to sort of make that strategic decision of, okay, do I want this enormous comedian to come through in November? If I do, then I'm probably going to have my rest of my comedians are going to be, a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Maybe for a minute. Or I'm going to, I'm going to make it up, in a few months, you know?
Yeah.
So it's just like with any, you know, some sort of marketing investment that you're going to make. Those are the ways I have to think about that.
Yeah. There's a lot of like corollaries with like sports with this one, right? Like you can have one big name and
Yep.
take up a lot of payroll,
For sure.
and that'll fill seats, but will it turn into a winning formula?
Yeah.
It's just a moving target.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. And in terms of, you know, in terms of sport teams, you'll be very interested to see who we become. I don't know if I don't know enough about sports to make a current reference. But I wanted to say something about a sucky team, and I realized I don't think I've watched a sports game in 10 years, so that won't be helpful. But I'm sure we'll start off with the underdog. How about Rudy? Let's do Rudy. We're Rudy right now, and but then that doesn't really work because he really only just played for like 2 minutes. So we don't want to do that one either. So whoever it is, that's who we are. Sports metaphor. We can do a war metaphor after this.
Perfect.
Whatever you want.
When I was at the Comedy Cellar once, there was a pretty big comedian.
Yeah.
I forget his name, but he was well known. Because I'm like a middle of the road comedian fan, right? Like I know maybe 20 names.
Yeah.
Right. But he bombed. I think
Mm-hmm.
he was like pretty sloshed, but he was like, I'm just testing out this material, right?
Yeah.
And it was not good. But he had that cachet of like a 20-year career. Do you ever get those ones where they're testing out material and you don't
Sure.
have to pay them as much?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it means we wouldn't have to pay him as much, but like that's how you get those big names in a road club, right?
Okay.
Because you know you'll have a big comedian that's selling out arenas, and then they sell those out. They do a huge Netflix special. They've got to start over. All that material is burned, so they don't want to go back to an arena and try out new material and bomb in front of 30,000 people. So they'll go back to a club and start working out something new, and that's when they would come out. And so, you know, that's an opportunity for us to get those bigger names through sometimes. There's a really great documentary called Comedian about Jerry Seinfeld largely, where right after Seinfeld, the show ended, he started over again with material to go do stand-up, and you see Seinfeld bombing, you know, in the documentary, same sort of thing. I mean, here's the thing with guys like that is like you're going to go to a show and you might hear some material that's like, that didn't quite work. But the difference between a comedian like that, like a Jerry Seinfeld, that is starting material over again, or like, you know, Tom Segura, for example, who just released a Netflix special, it's like 80th Netflix special. It's so funny. He's going to have to start over again. The difference is between them and like a new comedian is like, yeah, they might bomb a couple of jokes, but they're so good and honed in at this point and understand what works and what doesn't before they even get on stage. Yeah, they may bomb a couple of jokes, but it's like, you know, they're still going to have a 90% positive average, even with new jokes, as opposed to a new comic who's, you know, or more like a 2%, you know, versus the rest. So
Yeah, that's interesting. So the burning of material like didn't really exist in 1975 because nobody was recording it. You could just
Right.
go for years probably before you came back to San Jose.
yeah, for
Where
sure,
you started
for
out,
sure.
right?
And even if you had the exact same material long enough, you come back and they won't remember it, and you have a new crowd, and they'll be happy to see you again.
Wow.
You know, that's
Interesting.
like so Jay Leno kind of follows that model to an extent, as I understand it. His like he's got a lot of jokes that he's kept forever and ever. Has no desire to do a special because
Yeah.
he's like, why would I do that? And then all my material is burned.
Yeah.
You know, he can use what he's had, and I'm sure it's not like it's like he's got a solid 30 minutes. He's got you know, probably got 20 hours of great material.
Yeah.
He can use that anytime, and nobody's gonna be like, wait a second, that was on, you know, that HBO special.
Yeah.
So
What happens with comedians and their confidence when they do bomb? Because like you get to watch that too, right?
yeah, I mean, it's rough. You know, I don't like to reveal it, but I did stand up for a brief stint, and I'm in recovery now. But it's a terrible feeling, you know. There's nothing better than, I mean, it's not dissimilar to, you know, drinking in a hangover, you know.
Yeah.
It's like it's just a great feeling and a good high, and then that bomb is just like nothing feels worse, and you're like, I'm never going to do this again. I will never get back on the stage. I'm never going to, you know, have that Jaeger bomb ever again. But inevitably, you know, you're going to. You're
Yeah.
going to get back up. And so it's tough, but like if you want to make it, obviously you got to push through it. Everybody will bomb. Everyone will bomb.
Yeah.
And you know, it's part of the game.
Yeah. And I assume you'll be there to like console them backstage every once in a while. And,
Oh no.
No?
It's my favorite thing to watch people bomb. I love it. It's that's the funniest thing in the world, especially if it's somebody that you know is funny.
Yeah.
Because if you know they're funny and they bomb, typically it's like you can get what they were trying to do and it just didn't work in
Yeah.
that version. And sometimes they'll tweak it and then it will work really well. And sometimes you know, they'll abandon it entirely. But a few things are more enjoyable to me than seeing someone just absolutely eat dirt. So I won't be. I mean, I'm not gonna never be mean about it. I mean, maybe I'll be nice. I don't know.
You don't have rotten tomatoes and cabbage for the front row.
No, but it's not a bad idea. I'm not against it. We'll see.
That would be fun on open mic night, right?
Oh, I mean,
Fire away.
it would be nothing but a bloodbath.
Oh, very cool. All right. So for the Silicon Slopes community,
Yeah.
the state of Utah, to get involved, the way you guys, from my understanding, have built this campus and everything there, it's for like enduring fun and like fun that lasts for hours, if not
Yeah.
multiple hours. So like I see like some corporate involvement here. Have you guys thought
Absolutely.
through that?
Absolutely. So the whole experience there, again, is really one of a kind, and we want businesses to be there. Yes, for shows. You know, we have corporate packages people can have where, you know, you buy out the room and have an experience for your team, but it's also using the room for people that are coming out of town that you want to kind of wine and dine, do some sort of, you know, corporate meetings if you need to train your team, if you need to do whatever that's off site. Is a really unique experience for that group, and I think something that will be a lot more memorable for people than the typical spot. And so we want that room and all the rooms. We have, you know, Boxcar Comedy Club. We have the Cargo Cinema, which we're going to open in the fall. That's you know, an 80-seat vaudeville theater that's super rad.
Oh, cool.
And of course all the restaurants and everything else, but like come and use that. We've got big screens, you can project your stuff, but like we want the Utah Valley and just Utah business community to frequent that spot very, very often, and for you know private events and everything else. So we've got a lot of really cool stuff, from very corporate stuff to nonprofit, to arts events that are using the space, are going to be using the space over the coming months. And so absolutely want people to come through from that way.
Love it. It's a tie for me between Canadians and the British as far as like civilizations and cultures that are the funniest. What's your answer to that one? Like, who's the funniest culture?
Oh man. Well, I am Canadian, so I do lean there. I think part of the reason why you get so many funny Canadians, you know, you've got classically you've got your Mike Myers and Jim Carrey and just some great comics. Norm Macdonald, arguably the greatest of all time. Coming from Canada, I think it's the little brother syndrome a little bit. I think it's also just like being the observer of things that are going on. It's a lot more difficult to have perspective on something when you're in that thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So for an American, for example, you're in the politics, you're in the culture, you're inside of all of these things that are happening. And so I think it can be a little harder. It's harder to make fun of yourself sometimes than for other people to make fun of you. So I think something about Canada in particular is that, you know, there's just enough of a step back and a lack of involvement, just enough, but enough that we're, you know, there's an understanding of the culture. You can speak to it, that it becomes funny that way. I think that perspective is partly what it is. And, but I may also be overthinking it. I think that there's a ton of, obviously, tons and tons of Americans that are hilarious. Most people that are hilarious when it comes to stand-up are American. Stand-up comedy is very American in and of itself.
Yeah.
I think it was born here. And so I don't know. I'm not sure. I think I think it's individual and depends on that person, how much brain damage they have.
Yeah. Yeah. The Canadian comedians are great, but even just normal Canadians are funny. They seem to have a one-liner or, like, tell me about like this hockey game.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you a really funny story that you didn't see.
Oh yeah. No, one of the funniest people I think I know in the world is my good buddy Mason Dal, who I've known since I was 4. He's just the funniest kid, and I can't even. Part of it is his super thick Canadian accent. Oh yeah, buddy. But part of it is just he just has this perspective that just always makes me laugh, and an excitability that always makes me laugh. And it's funny how like a person like that, and who knows, maybe he would be an incredible stand-up. But I think that part of what makes him funny is the fact that he's not trying to be funny.
Yeah.
There's a very particular kind of person who can try to be funny and still be funny.
Yeah.
Right. If you're doing it professionally, clearly you're trying to be funny.
Yeah.
Most of the time when people are trying to be funny, they're really not funny. You're like, stop trying to be funny because it's not. It's irritating.
For sure.
But for somebody to be able to try and still be funny and make it feel natural is a very particular skill.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I do agree. I know a lot of really funny Canadians.
That's amazing. Strange Brew, right? You watch that. And
yeah, of course, it's required.
that's Canadian humor right there.
Yep.
Okay, so we've talked about how folks can get involved, talked about big opening day on August 19th. What are like the ticket costs on average for these shows?
Vast majority of tickets will be $20.
Okay.
So really easy, affordable to get in. And then we will have a 2-item minimum, sort of the typical club thing.
Yeah.
Again, it can be, root beer and some popcorn, but come in, and that just helps us to sort of make up the difference with some of this stuff. But $20 typically.
Cool. What are you most excited about for the next year with this project?
I'm excited for people to come. I'm excited for shows. I'm most excited for the actual reason why we're doing it. I'm excited for comedians to come in and be funny and for people to laugh.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than that. That's the reason why I do it at the end of the day, is when I'm in the back of the room and the room is laughing and the comedian is killing, and all this work, because it's, every show is like starting and breaking down a business from start to finish, right? Your product is the comic. You've got to, build that out. You've got to, you've got to get your consumers there. You've got to do all this marketing. And then when it's over, it's that whole thing that you did is done forever.
Yeah.
And so it's the reason why you do all this stuff and go through all the stress of it and deal with the people you deal with and spend the money you spend, so that you can have that, hour and a half of silliness. And so by far, I just want shows to start so that I can, have a reason for doing it right now.
I love it. Yeah, that is great. Like analogy, like you build it and you have to build it again.
Yeah. Every
Groundhog
time.
Day.
Every time.
Not for the faint of heart. Yeah, I'm excited because a lot of people are always telling me how sad or mad or angry or depressed they are. And I'm like, well, why don't you just go laugh a little bit? That usually is a pretty good remedy. And now there's a nice spot down there they can go do that.
Yeah.
Be less grumpy.
Yeah. It's, hopefully if we can give, some people a mild reprieve from, this life, this hellish experience that is life. It's like, every day is like going to the Olive Garden, and we're just one day we're giving you a reprieve from that. I told you we'd come back around. I was looking.
You got 2 shots.
Yeah, 2 shots.
Last question. Your favorite comedian?
It's a tough one. I think the actual answer is whoever I'm laughing at that moment is my favorite comic. Um, I I don't know. If somebody's making me laugh, I love them more than every comic I've ever heard of in that moment.
Yeah.
So that is my favorite. But like, again, Norm Macdonald. I rewatch maybe more Norm clips than any comedian, uh, and that's just a sad one to lose. But Norm Macdonald, I have Lenny Bruce tattooed on my arm, which is hilarious, for reasons I won't get into. And Dave Chappelle, one of the greatest of all time. But I don't know. It just depends on the moment. And yeah,
Yeah. That's a good answer because when you're laughing,
yeah,
what do you care? You're not gonna like go back to the historical database.
yeah. It's just funny. And what I would say also, like, not a stand up, but like Conan O'Brien is one of my favorite funny people in history. And I feel like partly what Conan O'Brien has done so well is like he is like his God is funny, right? And he's never been political. He's never been tried to be important. He's never tried to do something where he like I don't know does anything other than just be ridiculous. And that kind of humor is my favorite humor in the world. There's just heard his podcast recently where he was talking to Patton Oswalt about a bit that they did on the old late night show where they had Slipknot on the show, and they had this bit where they said that they had accidentally double booked their musical guests with a group called Slipnuts, which is three vaudevillian dudes that were pulled out like circus peanuts and would just slip on them and sing the song about slipping on nuts. And it's the stupidest thing in the world, and it's irritating and just ridiculous. I rewatched that bit again after hearing on the podcast, and I remembered it. I have thought about that 20 times in the last week, that Slipnuts bit, and laughed hard at it, harder than like these like, really, well conceived, well written, stand-up bits that are like whatever. And those are great too. I laugh at those as well.
Yeah.
But I laugh so much harder at just idiocy. And at the end of the day, that's what I love the most.
Love it. Well, congrats to you and your team for having this cool vision and building it out. Look forward to participating down there and having a good laugh. Thank you so much, Brandon.
Awesome. Thank you, Garrett.